Please be seated. Where now is your God? Your friend, your companion, your teacher, your guide. Where now is the one who loved you into wholeness, who brought you into community, the one whose courage gave you strength, whose compassion gave you courage when your own was lacking? Where now is the one you loved all the way to the end? Around the tomb we gather waiting. We listen to the sounds of the garden, the slight rustling of trees as they tremble and bend in the breeze. Hear the sounds of birds far off, singing in spite of our grief. We smell the warmth of the ground, see the sun creeping along the edges of the earth, stretching toward us. We feel the rocks beneath our feet as we walk in cautious steps toward a silent, open mouth of stone. The tomb, empty and dark. Our voices echo back to us. Where now is our friend? In the darkness, one of us sees the linens he was wrapped in, empty of his body, rolled up neatly as though they were bedclothes. We ask again, where now is our friend? Where is his body we had known and loved, his hands we had memorized, his feet which had walked with us all this time, his face which had beheld each of us in love, his mouth which had kissed us, his lungs which heaved when he prayed, when he sighed and sang. His heart which held more than we could hold ourselves. Where is this person who loved us even when we betrayed him, denied him, this person who loved us even as his body was brutalized, tortured, and killed? Where now is this friend? In our grief and disappointment, we stumble away in silence, through the garden and return home. We are exhausted, our eyes are tired and burning, our bones heavy as stone, our hearts beating so deeply, so loudly, as though our own bodies were a cave, that we can hear nothing but the sound of our own blood in our ears. We sink into ourselves. When we arrive home, we can do nothing but sleep. And in the garden, only one of us remains. While the rest of us gave up and carried ourselves away, Mary Magdalene stayed. In the garden, she sits down beside the tomb and weeps. He had said he would be coming back. And though it was hard to believe, she had hoped. She had stayed up all night, praying, waiting, and weeping, shaken by what she had seen. At the foot of the cross, she witnessed all of it. She was there. She saw the horror of his murder. She saw the way they tore his clothes, heard the shouting of the crowd, heard him cry out in thirst, and how they mocked him. She saw the way his body broke. She heard his voice one more time, and watched as his last breath left his body. Jesus, her friend, her beloved, had died. He died a horrible death, and she stood by, helpless to stop it, weeping with his mother, praying that what he had told them could be true, that this would not be the end. Sitting on the ground in the garden, she watches her tears wet the dry earth beneath her. She begins quietly to sing, just a hum at first, feeling her breath in her body, and then a sound escapes her mouth. Not even a word, but a sound, a feeling, a single note that steadies her from sobbing. She looks up from the ground and into the tomb, singing her small prayer into the darkness until she notices some light. Two figures are there, angels, but she doesn't realize it at first. She stands up to get a closer look, squinting through tears that won't seem to stop. Friends, while we are sleeping in our fitful, grief-worn sleep, our friend Mary has stayed behind. She is standing now. She is looking beyond the depths of the tomb, past the devastation of death, and into the hopeful heart of love. And where are we? And what could cause us to join her, to rise? This week, I saw a photo of a woman which has been haunting me. A Palestinian woman standing in the gray rubble of her home or a hospital or a school. It's impossible to tell what the place had been. Her white head covering is bright red with blood, seemingly not her own. She is looking out of frame at something we cannot see. Her face is hard to describe. Haunted, harrowed, hollowed out by the terror of what she has seen, by what she has held, and by what she has had to let go. I imagine our friend Mary like this, standing to look once more into the tomb. After so much loss, the blood still fresh on her clothing, the tears still stinging her eyes, she looks in love after what she has lost and what she prays may still live. And she stands. Impossibly, she stands. All week, I've been thinking of her, praying for her, this woman whose name I will never know. I don't want to make her an emblem of her own suffering. I don't want to make up stories about her to myself that will never, ever come close to the truth, that will never, ever touch the depth of her humanity. And still, I think of her and I wonder. I pray that she and all people will find themselves standing before a gardener who turns out to be their beloved, that we will find ourselves liberated from the suffering this world that we inflict ceaselessly on one another. Back in the garden, our friend Mary stands like this woman stands, staring into the distance, eyes fixed on what cannot be, but yet one day, this day, will be. The tomb is empty but for angels, and a man appears and asks, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She doesn't recognize him at first. Her tired eyes are blurry with tears and sleeplessness. She tells the man she is looking for her friend. His body, she explains, has been moved, and the man, after a moment, says her name. Her name in a voice that she knows so intimately that it feels as though it could be coming from her own mouth. She cries out, finding her voice, a voice that is her own. He is the friend she is looking for, her teacher, her partner, her beloved. Himself, but not himself. He is changed in some way she can't describe. She grabs onto him, but he gently moves her hands away. He says, "Friend, I cannot stay. But go and tell the others. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them you have seen the Lord." And here we are, my friends, sleeping. And Mary is here, shaking us awake, shouting, "I have seen the Lord. I've seen the promise of God's love, which returns us to ourselves and to one another, which reconciles and redeems us, which wakes us up and gets us moving. Hearts open, back to love." My prayer today is, God, please help us as we help Mary. Help us as Mary helped herself, as you helped her. Help us to recognize what urges us forward, what we love and cannot live without, and what we can release, in faith that it will return to us transformed and transforming, and that we will awaken to the love that awaits us and that is already here. Amen.